Puerto Rico is now bracing for a direct hit from Tropical Storm Dorian. The National Hurricane Center says Dorian's track has significantly changed overnight. Dorian is now expected to strike the eastern side of the island of Puerto Rico and Vieques. Then the storm is forecast to strengthen into a Category 2 or stronger hurricane, making landfall on Florida's east coast this weekend.
All right, the updated forecast track puts millions of Americans, look at that map there, from Miami all the way up to Savannah, Georgia, in the path of a potentially major hurricane. What makes Dorian such a wild card is higher uncertainty about how intense it will be and where it's going to go. We're going to speak live with the director of the National Hurricane Center in just moments. We want to begin, though, with CNN meteorologist Chad Myers with the new forecast track. Chad, I know you've been up all night looking at this, and it's changed and it's dangerous.
It has changed, John, and you know, we talk about the weather models, the American model and the European model, and how one does better than the other, but they both have been junk. I'm not kidding you. Not their own fault. There's something going on in the atmosphere that they don't see, that those models don't know about, and it's like, for me, that's my tool, and so I have to be able to use my tool to tell you what's going to happen. Whether it's right or wrong, I feel like I'm pounding in a nail with a pipe wrench, though. The tools today and the last couple of days have been terrible. But here is what we've been seeing. Yesterday at this time, we were over St. Lucia, and the forecast was something like that. No, nowhere near that. But look at what has happened to the storm. What could possibly forecast this, then this, then this, and then back? There was a time yesterday, somewhere around 8 o'clock in the morning, where the Hurricane Hunter aircraft couldn't even find the center because it wasn't where they expected it to be. They were 15 or so miles away from it, trying to find it. So where does it go from here? Right over St. Croix, right over Vieques, right over the eastern part of San Juan, with winds probably in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. We can deal with that. Not if your house has a blue tarp, but you know, we can put those back on. Here's the real rub, though, and the models are again just widely scattered at 120 hours. This is a 100 mile per hour storm, somewhere between South Florida and some models now Charleston, making a big right-hand turn. So what was apparently yesterday a very nice tight little pattern now has just widened again at the very end, because the models are saying, wait a minute, how did that just happen? There's the storm, 60 miles per hour, 70 mile per hour gusts, got a little bit stronger overnight. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft is right about there. So it is almost there to give us a new pressure, a new wind speed, and what's going on with the center. Right here is the center of the storm. You hate it when you can see the center of a storm on radar. That means it's getting close to land. And there it is. That right there, that would be St. Croix. And that's the next island to feel some wind. I've been watching a webcam from St. Croix. So far, so good. But the winds are about to pick up.
Okay, Chad, bring us the update as soon as you have a new one. Thank you very much. Puerto Ricans still recovering, of course, from Hurricane Maria nearly 2 years ago. The island's fragile power grid will now face a critical test with the first major storm to hit there since Maria. CNN's Polo Sandoval is live in Ponce with more for us. Polo.
Allison, it does look quite picturesque here right now in Ponce, Puerto Rico, but I can tell you that things will certainly change later today. Many of the residents here in Puerto Rico are waking up to this news that the storm has essentially shifted tracks. And now, of course, the concern is that they could feel a more direct effect by Dorian, particularly in the next coming hours. And that is extremely worrying for many who are still recovering from Maria. There are still blue tarps on some homes. And then when you hear some of those stories from 2 years ago, many people were in the dark for many months. And as you correctly point out, this will be the first real test after some of those repairs, after millions of dollars were put into that system to get people back online. The result now is that state of emergency that's in place across the island here, with hundreds of shelters opening their doors for anybody who's living in any places that are identified as vulnerable. And it's not just the power grid, but also the risk that comes from heavy rain, also potential mudslides in some of those mountainous areas. And as for non-essential government employees here on the island, they've been told to stay home. Children, too, John and Allison, there is no school on the island today.
All right, Polo Sandoval for us in Puerto Rico. Polo, thank you very much. As you said, going to get worse there over the next several hours. Joining me now from Miami is Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center. Ken, thank you so much for being with us. The guidance shifted overnight and created a whole range of new concerns and new dangers. Please explain.
I tell you, when they're weak like they were yesterday, and you're trying to find a center, the center was jumping around on us. I mean, you got the aircraft out there where the center was supposed to be, found different places. When they're weak, when they're generating, that center bounces around. And what happens is when you find a new center, that can have big impacts on that track and where it goes down the road. And that's what happened overnight. You know, it's a different center, and the whole track shifted to the east. That means a little more warm water and a little bit more time over water to get further north and more time to strengthen.
All right, talk to us about that. In a few hours, over Puerto Rico. How much over Puerto Rico remains to be seen. But then the open water and the new news overnight, Florida. All of it, from Miami up to Jacksonville, maybe even into Savannah, Georgia, could get hit by a Category 2 hurricane. And you have some concerns it could be even stronger. Why?
You know, there's always so much uncertainty when you get out in the further time frames in the forecast. I mean, it's, you know, we actually, if you look over history, the track, we're doing better over time with improvements in the models with the track than intensity. Intensity is still very tough. It's the ocean parameters, it's the atmosphere parameters, it's the parameters of the storm itself. Intensity is tough. So the new forecast takes it a little further east, less interaction over some of the mountains, and then that means more time over water. And with time, yeah, we are forecasting a hurricane, and there's plenty of time for it to strengthen. So we got to watch for updates in the forecast. We call it anchoring on a forecast, and going into a holiday weekend, we have to be careful not to just look at the forecast now. Let's watch for those updates because it does change with time.
It stays out over that warm water for an extended period of time with less interaction with land. Talk to me about the Florida coast. Where are you seeing now the potential impact, and when might that be?
Yeah, I think it's important to pay attention to the cone of error here, because look how large it is by the time you get into the extended forecast. So more things can change. I mean, the ridge that we're looking at here, the big high pressure that's going to steer this thing back to the west, stronger, weaker, you know, remains to be seen. We're going to watch. So anywhere in this area, the Florida coast, even up to the Georgia coast and the South Carolina coast, we have to pay attention real close. 2/3 of the time, we expect the center to be somewhere in that cone. So let's pay attention to it over the next few days and watch for those changes.
All right, let's talk about the next few hours. Impact on Puerto Rico, the eastern side of the island, which is part of the island that was so directly affected by Hurricane Maria 2 years ago.
Yeah, you know, you start getting tropical storm force winds and rainfall. And by the way, I was trying to get this graphic. This is brand new. We actually got the brand new rainfall graphic for Puerto Rico based on that new track forecast, and it literally came in about 5 minutes ago. So look how that shifted. See, whenever these tracks shift, so do the impacts. And we were talking about some of the rainfall on the western part of the island, and now that is shifted to the eastern part. So anywhere from, you know, some places getting maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain, but some places could max out much higher than that.
And that 8 inches, yellow is 8 inches of rain, and there's a double threat in Puerto Rico. You have the storm surge in the water coming in, and then the rain and flooding coming down from the mountains. Isn't that correct?
That's right. When you have the mountains and you start getting, you know, what's called, you know, lifting, you know, the air goes up on those mountains, and when it does that rain becomes really heavy and it drops even more. So it can enhance some of that rainfall amount. But look, you know, you got 8 inches per the computer model here. So it could be some, you know, large areas of rainfall. That means flooding, and you can get some landslides too. So we just really got to pay attention. So we're talking about Florida, but immediately, you know, the conversation really has to be about Puerto Rico as well.
All right. That's in the next several hours. Impact expected. Ken, I know you have a lot to do, your work cut out for you. This has been a tough hurricane to predict because it is small, but it's still very, very dangerous. Thanks so much for being with us.